Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian here at the Dubai Air Show, where our coverage is sponsored by FLIR. And we're talking to Rumble Powell, Captain Matt Powell, as well as Brian Bear Privette, who's a major in the United States Air Force. Both of you guys are from Seymour Johnson, from the 336th Fighter Squadron, the Rocketeers, and we'll get to that in a minute because he's got a very amusing patch, which is a very interesting double entendre. Bear, very cool that you are a bear, and your call sign is Bear, as the backseater of the jet, or the pilot's seeing eye. What did you call him?
The seeing eye wizzo. Yeah. I recommend you get one. They're pretty good.
And you said it's a wonder you got. You said it's a wonder you guys got here without him.
That's it. This thing, it's not good going cross country. So when you're pulling out all the maps and you're getting different points, you're very happy he's in the back seat helping you out at that point.
And were you saying like every couple of minutes, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet?"
Yeah. A little bit of that here and there.
So I wanted to ask you, in all seriousness, you guys fly the F-15E, the Strike Eagle, just absolutely one of the workhorses of the Air Force, Combat Air Forces team. Talk to us a little bit about, everybody has a sense and they know sort of on the ground and what the guys are doing on the ground. Talk to us a little bit about the importance of the mission. You guys are forward deployed in the region and you're flying real world missions all the time, including some very, very long drags to get back and forth from some of the things that you guys have to do. Talk to us about the challenging nature of the mission, because in every one of these operations, counter ISIS, troops are in very, very close contact, whether Allied troops or our troops. Talk to us about some of the challenges associated with delivering ordnance and delivering air effects, in this kind of contested, tough environment.
Absolutely. So I think the advantage with the Strike Eagle particularly is the two-seat jet. So while I'm focusing more on the air-to-air picture, which the situation out there is rather difficult. It's rather complex with what we're seeing on a day-to-day basis, but it's good that I can sit back, focus on the air-to-air side, keep us safe from other aircraft that are operating in the area, and then Bear can worry about the guys on the ground at that point, and he's in close communications with those guys while we're overhead for multiple hours. I would say some of the hard things are those long missions and saving enough fuel and worrying about weather to get home, as well as continue to give those guys close air support, especially when they need it. So it is a very complex situation.
Bear?
Yeah, contested is the correct word for that. In the past, we've been, air superiority was never ever a doubt. It was always just kind of us being there. So that portion, trying to make sure that we're not, doing any sort of close passes or contested air, fighting with other than coalition fighters out there is probably the main challenge that we're coming up with right now. Beyond that, working with all of our coalition guys on the ground, they're not all passing the information as to where they're at on a timely basis. Where fights happen and they break out, you might not know exactly who's who. That's the other part that's somewhat challenging. So.
You mentioned, both of you managed to mention contested environment. That's something which the Air Force was very comfortable with for many decades throughout the Cold War. We didn't worry about it until very, very recently. How's training? How's thinking? How has the entire business for you guys changed? Because historically, it was sort of a sense that you guys were sort of nice, fat, dumb, happy at altitude, lasing targets when folks were designating them for you, as opposed to an environment now which was never that easy, by the way, because guys were always very close and you guys were doing even gun passes to help support folks on the ground. But talk to us a little bit about how you're re-gearing your mind to be able to do that ground precision, but also keep your eyes and ears attuned to a guy who's got some very serious triple-digit SAM capability in the region and maybe interested in demonstrating it at some point just to make a point.
Well, I think the exercises leading up to this has been a huge help. Places like Red Flag and that, where they're stressing you to the point where you're fighting some of the most capable adversaries that you would probably see in theater, which we have seen on a daily basis. And just getting that exposure before you come out here in a very complex environment, I wouldn't say makes this easy by any stretch of the imagination, but it better prepares you for when you do see that situation that you've never seen before. And I will see every day we go up and fly, it is a different situation, and something happens on that mission that you probably did not brief and you were not expecting, and you were having to adapt airborne. But kind of alluding to that division of duties, if you will, that I can't back him up as much as I need to, maybe while he's dealing with the guys on the ground, but he has full confidence that I got the radar out there and I'm looking for the air guys much as he's watching the guys on the ground. So
it's a leadership challenge for sure. The fact that we are training constantly just for that air-to-ground picture. Guys can rely on that, and that's secondhand nature now. Like I said, with the making sure that we know who's who, that part is a little bit nuanced, and we will work through that. But the kind of the level-headedness of that air picture is really what we're making those strides, and that's where the leadership has a lot of faith in us, and it's refreshing actually. So guys are trying to be cool, calm, collected, and we just get the job done.
Exactly. Well, right. I mean, what did Jim Lovell say? When they asked him when Apollo 13's fuel cell exploded 200,000 miles from Earth and heading toward the moon, they were like, "Well, didn't you panic?" He's like, "Would it have really made a difference?" I mean,
Exactly.
It's we got a long way to go. Let's get back to the ground strike part of it, right? And so you guys have had multiple deployments. You guys have done this. Not that it's second nature because there's always something new about it. But what are some of the keys to effective close air support? You guys, every airman I know, every time you take off, you're thinking about the guy on the ground and how you deliver the best effect for them, and they're counting on you, and it's literally life or death, right? It was funny, I covered the Army a long time ago, and the Air Force says, look man, we got it there in 15 minutes. And the guy on the ground is like, yeah, 15 minutes means whether or not all of us die or all of us come home. So, I understand that, but there's also distance and tyranny of that and everything else. But what are some of the tricks to good, high quality air support that you guys have learned in your deployment?
I think it starts with the briefing, and we work closely hand in hand with the Army. We have a representative that goes ahead and gives us our brief before we even step to fly. So we have a pretty good situation of what's going on with the ground and what their scheme of maneuvers is going to be, and we'll bring that into our flight brief and make sure we're tracking and everything, and we'll have a game plan of how we're going to push out where all the friendlies are at that particular moment. And when you check in the air, obviously things have changed. And when you start talking to that JTAC and he's actually taking fire, and you can, no kidding, hear him yelling and asking for the weapons or whatever the situation might be. And then once you do break contact with the enemy at that point, you can kind of hear the relief on his voice and everything. And so every day, you hope that those guys never show up in that situation, but you're glad that you're overhead to actually, no kidding, make a difference. And then we'll try and debrief with the JTACs and stuff out in the field or whoever it might be that we're supporting out on the ground, and just say, hey, we're glad and we're happy we could be there. And I think they usually say the same thing, that, thankfully you guys were overhead today.
Communication is probably the biggest, and then knowing what the ground commander's intent is. So what is it that we can do to best provide support is really the biggest issue, the key that we're looking for to make sure that we can help them the best. It's not every mission that you check in and they're taking hostile fires right then, and it could happen 5 minutes after you check in, or it could be hour 2 when you're just getting ready to head to the tanker. So just kind of being prepared and understanding what it is that we can do to help them best. And there's multiple effects that we can provide that really will meet that intent. And then as long as they have that open communication, that two-way, like you talked about, with knowing where they're at, what their kind of intent is before we even get the jet started, and then once we're in the air, making that communication happen as well.
If you guys had a wish list of what kind of capability you would like to have on the jet, is it smaller munitions? Is it more, what is it? Because I remember talking to Ron Keyes, who was former Air Combat Command commander, and they were talking about small diameter bomb, and it's 250 pounds, and he was like, yeah, but he said it's a very powerful 250 pound bomb that has the boom of a much, much bigger warhead, and he's like, he was saying it's just sometimes you want a much smaller blast than that. So from the standpoint of the guys who are doing this, right, there's always room for 2,000 pounder or bigger, or a Moab or something like that if you want to achieve it. Not that you're hauling that, but that would be a trick actually.
Yeah.
But smaller, like if you guys had a wish list, you could be sitting with General Goldfein over a beer and be like, hey, boss, what we really think what do you think you guys could use, right? If the acquisition system was going to, magic pump it out there, Rumble and Bear have a wish list, what would it be on it?
Yeah, well, I think the Strike Eagle is awesome in that we can load up all different types of munitions. So whether we have a rack of SDB out there for the 250-pound weapon, or we need to carry out the 2,000-pound JDAM, I'm glad that we have that flexibility. And we usually do actually fly with a complement of 500 pounds, 250 pounds, as well as 2,000 within our formation, which gives us a whole lot of options, especially when you're in these, collateral environments and stuff like that. You're always worried about the people on the ground and that those effects, won't affect other than the target of what you're actually going after. I think SDB2, I think that's a pretty cool thing that's coming around. So the laser-guided SDB would be a pretty cool feature, because I could see a couple scenarios where we would like that laser-guided to kind of shift the spot if you needed to. Because with the regular JDAM, once the bomb's gone, it's gone to the coordinates at that point, and if you need to change something in flight, you're kind of out of luck in that nature. So STP-2 sounds like a pretty good thing that's coming around for that.
Absolutely. We do have great flexibility with all the different weapons that we have, and it really just depends on the fight we're in. The only other thing I would add is maybe getting a helmet-mounted sight for the back seat. That would probably be the best upgrade that we could get to a CAS environment for sure for that support role.
And now let me ask you about the airplane is not a spring chicken, very well maintained by United States Air Force maintainers. But the F-15, some cracking issues. There was that famous airplane, the C, that broke in two. Any availability rates still very high, because we were talking, all the eyes are on the bell of the ball. This is a little bit like Toy Story. There's Woody, and then Buzz Lightyear shows up, and all of a sudden people are just like, ooh. So I don't know, that wasn't very good, but I was just trying to ooh. How's she to support, how's she to fly, and are you spending more time up than you're spending down?
So you already alluded to it. It starts with the maintainers. Those guys are out there 24 hours a day, working their tails off in the dead of the summer, trying to get these jets airborne and everything like that. I would say from our maintenance perspective, they're doing the best job that they can, and it's very few times that we would actually have to step to a spare aircraft. They're able to work usually the problems real time. We're going out there flying 6, 7, almost 8-hour missions at times, and I've had very few issues airborne. So the support that those guys are given, as well as the availability of parts and everything, seems to be working pretty good, and we're able to support everything that we've been tasked to actually go out and fly. So we've been very happy with the aircraft and how it's performing.
And he's the one who's really doing part of the pre-flight. But I guess you're riding on the airplane too, so I should ask. Just kidding.
No, absolutely. We have a division of duties when it comes to doing the pre-flight. But as far as the availability, he had all of that stuff. It's no issues. The only other thing that we'd add is, like, when we're back home doing the training, going through the phase flow, that sort of thing. Our depot team is pretty solid as well. I've got no issues. I've never had a doubt when we get into the jet that it's going to perform as it's designed, right? So they check everything over. They've made the updates. It's probably not as old as the ones that you've seen with the issues. The A model, that sort of thing. But yeah, this jet is solid, and I'm happy that it's going to be around throughout our career.
And I was just, by the way, joking. I know that you have a role. And last question. So I have to ask you about this cool little patch on your sleeve, because I thought at first it was a WTF patch, not that anybody knows what that is. But tell us what WFFFFFFF are.
So we are the world famous Rocketeers. So that's what this is, the world famous flying fighting Rocketeers.
Flying fighting Rocketeers.
Yep.
And that's your story, and you're sticking with it.
That is it. There's 3 or 4 F's in there, and you heard 3 of them.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get to, because I can count. Guys, thanks very much. Best of luck on the deployment.
Thank you so
really
much,
appreciate you guys taking time with us, and hope you guys are enjoying Dubai. You've obviously been to Dubai before?
I have, yes.
First time for me.
So what do you think? It's pretty amazing, isn't it?
It's not a bad place to come and spend a week.
Have you gone skiing?
I have not done the skiing yet. No. But the beaches are nice.
Yeah. It's an incredible place. So anyway, I don't work for the local tourist authority. Guys, thanks very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.